Story 1. Class of 26. Thank you, thank you. Okay, thank you. Ha ha ha, all right. Thank you. Guys, I'm not the Pope. Thank you, thank you. My goodness. Normally people aren't that happy to see me walk on stage if I'm not carrying a guitar. Well, who'd have thought I, of all people, would be giving the commencement address at a place like Brown, or that I'd be given this fancy gown and an honorary doctorate. I've no doubt your president, Dr. Holman, approved me as a speaker because I'm famous and not so much for my academic achievements, but I did do some research of my own when I was asked here. Yeah, I know, I'm old to you graduates. I think your parents are happier to see me up here than you are. You would have been happier with Sabrina Carpenter, but I'm from Rhode Island, so I'm the local guy. Well, I'm flattered, Madam President. Thank you for having me here and for my fancy gown. It's hot out here and really bright, so I promise I won't drag. This won't take long. I watched some commencement addresses online. Never let anyone tell you I'm not willing to prepare. As near as I can tell, a good commencement address is usually broken into 3 parts. First, there's some kind of acknowledgement of what you've done. Well, who am I to comment on that? I never went to college, much less one in the Ivy League, and so you graduates know much better than I what you've done to be sitting here. In fact, I think it's fair to say no one could ever know better than you. Each one of you knows what you've gone through over the last number of years to be sitting there in your gowns and holding your scrolls, diplomas. Sorry, the last one I got was for high school, and that was 30 years ago. But you were the ones who stayed up late studying, who spent all those hours in the library, who wrote the exams. So, who am I to say? You understand what you did, and you should all be proud of it. Mums and dads, you should be proud too, and I know you helped, but it was them, these students. This is the first real professional accomplishment of your lives for most of you. Don't let anyone tell you not to be proud. You deserve that. Something was truly under your control as an adult, and now here you are. The second part of a good commencement address is advice, to tell you what you should do next. But you know what, class of 26? I was worried I might be the wrong person for the job. Many of you see, might be a little worried that you don't know what to do next. Many of you think you know for sure what you'll do next, and it'll turn out that you'll be doing something totally different. For some of you, it'll be a job, for some grad school, for some volunteering. I don't know, but the future is more complicated than you think. Trust me, it's going to throw some curveballs at you, and you may end up in a really unexpected place. And me, well, the thing is, I am doing the exact thing I knew I was going to do from the time I was 12 or 13. Maybe even younger. I started taking piano when I was 6. My parents weren't all that musically inclined, but they figured it was a good thing to put a kid into. You know what they say, 20% of children take music lessons and 80% of adults wish they had. Well, my folks got me in the 20, and once I started, no one could pull me away. I've been asked 1,000 times, maybe 10,000, why I'm good at music, why I'm going at playing instruments and singing and writing songs. I think people want to know some secret formula. Why is anyone talented? Is it in the body? In the case of sports, I guess you might have to be big and strong. But anyone who's seen me try to play a sport knows being a rock star isn't about being super athletic. So is musical ability something in the brain? I'm not sure it is the way you think. When a kid is learning an instrument, a little kid, you want them to practice for 20 minutes 5 times a week. That's all it takes to progress at the rate you're supposed to, and it's all most children can really do. But not me, folks. Oh no, I would practice for 2 hours a day, maybe more. I'd practice until my parents went crazy and had to make me stop. I'd sneak downstairs early in the mornings to get more in, and I don't mean just fooling around, I really would practice. My teacher would give me more to learn, more sheet music to memorize, and I'd eat it up and beg for more. If my teacher wanted to teach me one concept, I'd ask to learn 3. When I got my first guitar at 10, well, I loved it even more than piano. Anyway, by then I'd pretty much outgrown every piano teacher in town. Like it says in the song, I played it till my fingers bled. That's talent, I think. It's not something in your brain or in your soul. It's desire. It's just a willingness to work. If I'd practiced the same amount as any other kid, I wouldn't be standing here. I'd be a guy doing a regular job who could play a little piano. And I think that's true of most things. Folks, I don't know much about law, but I am convinced that the difference between a great lawyer and me is that a great lawyer just wanted to spend all their spare time reading the law. I think the difference between a doctor and anyone else is a doctor couldn't get enough of biology and medicine. If you know a really great barber, he's great because he thinks about cutting hair all the time and puts in more hours than anyone else. That's the difference. I don't know what each of you wants to do. I bet there's a lot of you want to be lawyers and doctors and even barbers, artists, stockbrokers, whatever. Look at all the things you've studied, earth sciences and statistics and urban studies. If you're going to be great at those things, it's because you can't stop practicing. You can't get enough. I mean, sometimes it's a drag. You'll get tired. Sometimes I can't even look at a guitar. I gotta go watch TV or play Call of Duty, but it always calls me back. I recharge and I want more. If you're doing something right now that makes you feel that way, I am telling you right now you could not be luckier. And if you're not, should you panic? Nope. You will find it. Get out there and do stuff. Do hobbies. Experience new things. Try doing a few different jobs. Help other people at their thing. I know a guy who's the best technical producer I have ever known, just a wizard in the booth, who wasn't in music at all until he was in his 30s, and now he's the best. It happens, and it can happen to you. You will find the thing you love to do and are good at. Do that. Don't worry, you'll make some money at it. Might not be as much as some people, but it'll be enough. But you know what? You gotta be careful because it's a trap too. By the time I was a teenager, I was 100% sure I'd end up a music star. 100%. And I was focused like a laser. A laser. I thought of nothing else. Sure, it didn't happen right away, because it doesn't. You need to get a band together and it never works out, so you break up and get another one. You play dive bars and festivals for 6 fans. It takes a while for the break to come and you don't know what that break is going to be. Maybe you get famous on YouTube, or a song gets put in a TV show or a movie by someone you know, or you get seen by the right person. But if you keep at it, these things will happen. And if you keep working, you will be successful. Not every day is perfect. You'll make mistakes. I sure made a lot early on, but you practice and work and work and practice and success comes. But that makes you think you can control it all. All that time, things weren't always perfect, but it was always progress. I was always getting better. I was always getting just a little more popular. I was always getting closer. I was like an engineer in a train, pushing up the track mile by mile. It seemed completely inevitable things would go well because my work was paying off. There's something called winner's disease, where if your work and planning results in success, you think you'll always keep winning, but you can't. Never forget that. Of course, I did get there. Here I am. If you spend all your time working on one thing, practicing for one future, having one goal, you might get it. But it fools you into thinking you've got that control over everything in your life, not just your greatest passion. And you don't. Your health might not go your way, or some other misfortune. The world's chaotic and you can't control everything. You need to rely on other people. And that's where it can really go wrong. See, everything I did when it came to music worked for me, and I had that going for me. But, and a lot of you know where I'm going with this, right? You can be unpleasantly surprised sometimes. And so, yeah, my manager stole a lot of money from me back in the 2000s. I even knew that was a risk in my business. Stories about that are pretty old. So I thought I was really keeping an eye on it. But things were complicated, too hard to entirely control, and he was good at stealing. Knew how to forge documents, move things around just so. And yeah, he fleeced me for a lot and blew it all on drugs and gambling and cars. Heck, I wasn't even the only one, but he got me. Now, I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me, and I'm sure not begging for money. I'm very lucky when it comes to money, and I've still got more than anyone really needs. I'm just fortunate that the job I'm good at pays more than most jobs, so things are fine. But that was a heck of a thing when it comes to trust. And I don't just mean trust in a manager. I mean trust in how the universe works. Trust in yourself, in whether you can actually control your destiny. After that, I started wondering if I really could trust the other people in the music industry. Ours is an industry with a reputation for scummy behavior, and I'll tell you what, it's true. A lot of backstabbing. I'd always sort of ignored it because things had always gone pretty well, but when your eyes are opened by one incident, you notice others. I remember something my dad told me. If you turn on the light and see one rat, there's 10, but you have to see the first one to know there's a problem. And then you find out you don't exactly own the rights to the songs you wrote. That happened to me. What a shock that was, folks. You find out, sure, you can still make money playing them. You still have some royalties coming in, but they're not really yours. Other people who had nothing to do with writing those songs, who didn't spend all that time practicing and sweating and grinding to create all that, get a lot of the money. Now I know you're thinking, is this guy saying I can't trust anyone? No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you'd better be sure. You'd better be sure. Sorry. It's hot out here. Ooh, I'm sweating. So this is the third part of a good commencement speech. when I wrap up the message with a bit of a meaningful twist. Because you see, it's not just about your job. It's not just about your investments. You have to be careful of everyone, your doctor, your lawyer, everyone, even your family. See, the day comes when maybe there's something about even people you love that just make you wonder, things that added up over the years. When your wife seems to change just in little ways, at first you think maybe it's just that, well, she's 50 years old too, and maybe she's like me and feels it a bit, even if you still think she's beautiful. And the kids aren't grown up yet, really, but they're almost in college. They don't need her as much anymore, so maybe that's something. And things she says, you know, like suddenly saying, "I'm not all that good a wife," and you think she's just fishing for a compliment. And then, this one time, she comes home from what was supposed to be a night with a few friends, and she's home late and prancing around the bedroom happy about her night out, and you think, geez, that was some night out. And later you remember that's how she acted on her first few dates with you, and a few other things. And then one night, you're just lying there in bed, and suddenly all those little things come together like a constellation where you finally see why they thought it looked like an animal. And you wonder if the worst thing happened, and you use some of that money you've got, and you hire a PI, and find out it did. When you've been betrayed by everyone, by your manager, by your colleagues, even your goddamn wife, what do? You take control. That's what you do. You realize you spent too much time focusing on one thing, music in my case, and not enough on other things. Don't worry, President, I'm almost done. Yeah, almost done. I'll be done soon. See? You graduates have spent the last 4 years doing your best to take control of your lives, but you had to take control of yourselves. Self-control is hard, but it's simple too. You take control of the only person you have total control over. It takes a lot of hard work to graduate from a place like this, a lot of self-control and discipline, hours and days and weeks of it. But as hard as that is, it's easier than controlling other people. Only you command yourself. How to control others? I know a way. There's one thing you can always do. I don't know much about anything except music. I never went to a place like this. But hey, I can use Google. I bet you've never heard of something called Amanita ocreata. It's Latin. Well, some of you have if you're in the right program. The destroying angel mushroom. We have it out in California. They don't exist here in New England. They basically look like white mushrooms if you don't know just what to look for. But if you do, they're all over Northern California near oak trees. And no matter how much you cook them, they're always poisonous. And so I put some in the risotto I cooked 2 nights ago for my wife and kids. Because you know what I found out? My kids knew too. They were lying for Cassie and what she was doing. 6 months at least. And they were playing me for a fool. But I got control back. You stay back. You stay the fuck back. Here, don't try me. It's loaded. Sit the fuck down. Don't trust anyone. Never. You can only trust yourself. Work as hard as you can. Find what you are good at and love doing and rely on yourself. You'll never let yourself down even when others do. Keep control. Jesus, that hurts. Ate some of those mushrooms an hour ago. This is how long it took them too. Christ, stay back. Never trust anyone but yourself. No one else. No one. Horror at Brown University commencement. AP, May 25th, 2026. In a bizarre and grisly scene at Brown University's spring commencement ceremony, rock legend James "Dig" Diaz, famous frontman of rock quartet The Rodents, confessed to the poison murders of his wife and children. Brandishing a gun, Diaz collapsed before the horrified audience and later died, presumably from ingesting the same poisonous mushrooms he had used on his own family. Story 2. The Ghost and the Hack. Thomas McCoy, no second C, is a name you've probably never seen. Maybe you've spotted Tommy M, buried in the acknowledgements of a bestseller or scrawled on a Starbucks cup while he tapped away on a Chromebook in a corner booth. But you won't find his name on a book cover. Tommy, you see, is the best ghostwriter in America, maybe the world. The book about the astronaut who battled alcoholism. Tommy. The one by the Yankee who named names with too much pride. Also Tommy. 14 CEOs, each with a different spin on leadership. The pyramid of power, the confidence column, the effectiveness spectrum. All Tommy's inventions. He wrote the last 13 Wingnut Wilson thrillers and 4 of the last 5 presidential memoirs. He even filled in on the Wilson the Dog comic strip for 2 months in 2006 when Dan Harkins had shingles. He could write anything except, apparently, his own story. Which is how I got involved. I'm Ted McGinn, adjunct professor at a 3rd-tier state school in New Jersey. Once upon a time, I was a go-to guy for media tie-ins. I wrote 5 mysteries based on Police, NY, 2 sci-fi trilogies for the Planet Force 9 franchise, and 12 paperback romances spun off from the soap opera Almost Kissed. Hack work, sure, but it paid for some decent real estate in Jersey City and gave me just enough credibility to teach people who still believed writing could save them. Then one Thursday morning I got a call. "Is this Professor Ted McGinn?" The voice was gravelly, amused, and somehow familiar. "This is Thomas McCoy. I need your help." We met at a diner off Route 17, where the booths still had real leather, and the waitresses called everyone Hon. Tommy was already seated, a half-empty coffee mug in front of him, and a yellow legal pad filled with scribbles. He looked like someone's retired uncle, part office job, part Little League coach. Heavy black glasses hiding heavier eyes, a windbreaker, and a Yankees hat that had seen better days suggested nothing of his bibliography. The only giveaway was the pen. Mont Blanc. Heavy, glossy, like a knife someone meant to keep sharpened. A gift, I assumed, from one of his famous friends. "You're taller than I thought," he said, not looking up. "I get that a lot," I said, "which I don't." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Thanks for coming. I know this is weird." "Weird's relative," I said. "You wrote the Secretary of Agriculture's memoir, didn't you?" "Ghosted it, yeah," he said. "But this time, I'm trying to do something different." He slid a thin folder across the table. Inside was a rough outline. Early life, the work, regret, maybe love. Each section had 3 or 4 bullet points, but they were vague, hesitant. The notes of a man who'd spent a lifetime writing other people's stories and now had no idea how to tell his own. "You said on the phone you had writer's block," I said. "It's worse than that," he said. "It's like I don't exist unless I write for someone else. I can't find the angle on myself. Everything I start sounds fake or pompous or like a press release." "And you want me to? Help me find the thread," he said. "You wrote this line in The Interrupted Vacation about how love perseveres, even through regret. That one got under my skin. You ever read something and wish you wrote it yourself?" I shrugged. "I don't read many soap opera tie-ins." Tommy smiled. "You've never been stuck for 2 days in a Romanian airport with no cell service and a newsstand where the only book in English you didn't write is The Interrupted Vacation. That's the kind of irony I wish my students understood," I joked. The waitress came by with coffee. He ordered another black. I asked for a Sprite and a ham and cheese on rye. "You know," I said, "I'm still trying to figure out why you called me. There are better writers, cleaner prose, bigger names." "Maybe, but none of them know how to get past the cornball and hit the nerve," he said. "Your books have heart, even when they're ridiculous." "That's generous," I said, unsure whether I was being complimented or insulted. He looked up at me then, and his voice softened. "It's not. I've spent my whole life writing what other people want. You wrote what someone needed." We sat with that. Then he added, "Besides, there's something about you, like we've met before." I gave him a look. He backtracked. "Not literally, just something about the way you write feels familiar." That should have pinged something. Instead, I let it pass. "I want this to be the one they put my name on," he said quietly. I nodded. "Then let's get started." We began the next morning. Tommy insisted we work analog, no laptops, just pens, legal pads, and the occasional post-it war on the kitchen table. His outline became our map. We started with early life, but every time I asked a question, he swerved. "I could tell you about my childhood," he said, "but it's all boilerplate. Quiet, blue-collar father, complicated mother, first communion. My sister was nice to me. She eventually moved to Chicago and married a banker. We see each other every few years at our cousins' kids' weddings. Move along." "So, nothing formative?" I asked. "No school suspensions, no heartbreaks, no weird obsessions with volcanoes or frogs?" He cracked half a smile. "I preferred libraries to people. That's as formative as it gets. With a 4.0 and not many friends, I went to Holy Cross when it was still boys and majored in English and theology. I thought about becoming a priest but couldn't write homilies." "You couldn't write homilies?" I said. "That's your line." He raised an eyebrow. "Preaching is harder than people think." "I'm not disagreeing. I just didn't expect a guy who wrote my quarterback mind to be so ecclesiastical." He actually laughed at that. "We contain multitudes." We moved on to the work, where he came alive. He mimicked the authors he'd ghosted, the breathy Hollywood memoirist, the grizzled quarterback. and the spiritual CEO who talked about leverage and mindfulness in the same sentence. It was uncanny and often hilarious. I'd start laughing, and he'd crack up too, but then he'd go quiet. Not sad, just emptied. "You okay?" I asked one afternoon after he nailed a perfect impression of the faith-based space entrepreneur. "I'm fine," he said. "This part's just muscle memory." "Then what's next?" He glanced at the outline. "Regret," he said, and stood up to make more coffee. A week in, I'd had enough. "You know," I said, "if you want this book to mean something, you're going to have to stop hiding behind other people's voices." He stared at me. "You think I'm hiding? I think you're performing." He didn't argue. He rubbed his face and said, "You ever leave a story out of fear? Every writer does." "Yeah, well, sometimes the stories I didn't write were the ones that aged the worst." That night over dinner, he told me about a son he had never met, just floated it out, mid-salad. "His name was Eddie," he said. "You're just dropping that in now." "I don't know what I'm doing," he said, poking at his food. "That's why you're here." I nodded, writing the name down carefully. Then I looked at him, not as a project or paycheck, but as a man trying to say something true for once. After some time, I found a post on my pad, what I had not written. "You only get to rewrite the past once. Make it count." The next morning, I brought it up. "That Romanian airport story. What were you reading before the interrupted vacation saved you?" He didn't look up from his notebook. "I've never been to Romania." I blinked. "But that's what you said." He waved a hand like brushing away a gnat. "Oh, right. No, I just made that up. It sounded better than saying I found it in a used bookstore in Weehawken. It sounded offhand. But something broke. It was not a lie, only a crack in how things looks, like a wrinkle in the story before it ends. This happened late at night. We didn't even say a word for an hour. Tommy stood at the counter writing. I stayed at the table pretending to sort through interview notes, but mostly watching him. Normally he'd scribble a few lines, cross them out, swear softly and start over, but not this time. This time he just kept going, steady, focused, quiet. When he finally set the pen down, his hand hovered over the page for a second, like he wasn't sure whether to give it up. He walked over and handed me 5 handwritten pages, no title. No chapter number, just unfiltered prose. I left because I didn't know how to stay. I watched from further than I should have. I listened to men talk about legacy and leadership, and I knew I didn't qualify. I helped them tell stories about balance and devotion, and all I could think about was what I never gave. It read like a confession, not dramatic, not theatrical, just raw. He sat down across from me but didn't say anything. I kept reading. The ones who stayed, coached Little League after board meetings, flew home from war zones to catch birthdays, and woke up early to drive their kids to swim practice made me feel like an imposter. And the ones who walked away, who let the dream swallow them whole, I understood them too well. Neither group ever sounded happy, but the first ones always sounded less alone. I lowered the pages and looked at him. He stared at the sugar packets like they might rearrange themselves into something useful. "This isn't like the rest," I said. "It couldn't be," he replied. "This is the only one I couldn't fake." "Who's it for?" He hesitated. Then, someone I couldn't write for when it would have mattered. We sat in silence. "You want this in the book?" "I want it at the end," he said. "No edits, no framing. Just let it sit there." He pushed the pages back toward me. "Keep it," he said. "It belongs with you now." The next morning, Tommy was gone. No note, no call, just the smell of burned coffee and the sound of his absence. His duffel bag was missing from the couch. The legal pads were stacked neatly in the center of the table, except for one. It was tucked inside the manuscript, between the final chapter and the page he refused to title. A letter. It wasn't sealed. My name wasn't on it. But the handwriting was deliberate, slower than his usual scrawl. I started reading. I don't know how to ask for forgiveness. I don't know if I deserve it. I missed everything. Birthdays, recitals, heartbreaks, and report cards. I thought distance would make it easier. It didn't. I thought work would fill the space. It never did. Watching from far away doesn't count. Knowing your milestones doesn't mean I was there. I told myself for years that one day I'd explain it, that I'd write the truth just once, and maybe that would be enough. And then one day, I opened a book, not a famous one, not one with awards. It's just a paperback book in a used bookstore in Weehawken. I was reading a line which said, "Love lasts, even after regrets." The author was Ted McGinn. I knew immediately, so I called. Not because I needed help writing, because I needed you to see me, even if I couldn't say it out loud. There was no sign-off, just 2 words at the very bottom of the page, written like a sentence he'd been waiting his whole life to finish. Love, Dad. I didn't even cry. I did not run out of cabin or start yelling into the trees. I sat there for a long, long time. I was thinking about the past 2 weeks. Suddenly I turned on my laptop, then opened a blank page, and I finally started using my real name, which was Edwin Thomas McGinn. Story 3. The Loop. It took a few seconds to realize I was utterly and completely lost. Not the kind of lost when you're shopping in a grocery store with an unfamiliar layout and the bread is no longer on aisle 3. No, this was the kind of lost that makes your head spin and question whether or not you're even in the same country you started in. I knew I was in the Texas Hill Country, somewhere between Wimberley and my intended destination, Fredericksburg. At least, that was the case 40 minutes ago before my phone died. Mark, don't you have a phone charger, you might ask. Of course I do, in my room, back at the hotel, on my nightstand by the latest issue of Better Homes and Gardens. What? Reading it helps me fall asleep. Up the hill without a map. Not my idea of a perfect vacation, if I'm being completely honest. Maybe for some psycho who thrives off the unexpected and randomness of life, but that isn't me. Give me structure and I will thrive. So when I saw the same spindly oak tree for the 4th time, I knew something was off. I continued to drive anyway, just to confirm I was going crazy. The country road I followed seemed to be an endless circuit of dips and rises, which made no sense as driving up a hill was what got me lost in the first place. I don't know how I end this up walking in a circle around a hill. I was sure enough after 10 minutes I just saw the same tree on my left, near the edge of a field, but this time something was different. An ancient pickup truck sat beneath the tree. I pulled over quickly. Maybe whoever owned the vehicle could help me figure out where the heck I was. A warm blast of heat, like opening an oven door, greeted me as I stepped out of my beautifully air-conditioned Mazda. I forced myself to close the door and walk over to the base of the tree. The truck was probably blue at some point, but it was hard to tell beneath all the rust. Crates of peaches sat in the truck's bed. There was no tailgate. "Hello?" My voice stayed close in the thick, hot air. No one answered. Walking around to the cab revealed an empty seat and a half-full bottle of Mexican Coca-Cola. Someone had driven the truck here. They had to be close. "Looking for some peaches?" I nearly pissed my pants. Spinning around, I was met with the face of an old man. He wore denim overalls over a green checkered button-down. He was tall and spindly like the tree he stood under. His bushy, white eyebrows somehow balanced out the impressive length of his even whiter beard. No thanks," I stammered, sounding like an idiot. "You sure? Then be the sweetest peaches this side of the Blanco. My magic touch makes them huge too, see?" The man held up a peach nearly the size of a volleyball. "That is impressive, but I really just need to find the highway. Do you know how to get to the nearest one?" "The highway?" "Yes, 165. I thought I had turned left, but I think I accidentally went straight." "Straight? As in up the hill?" "Yes, I think so." The old man started to laugh, the sound causing a whistle through the gap where his front teeth should have been. "You done went up our driveway? Shoot. My wife really don't like people doing that. She can be a bit of a witch about it sometimes." "I'm sorry. I didn't even mean to." The world spuns. I grabbed the side of the truck quickly when a strong wave of dizziness hit me. I blinked back the sweat that had begun to drip down into my eyes. Was Texas in June always this hot? The old man's face went as pale as his hair. "Looks like my wife is hungry. You been here too long, boy. You gotta get out." "What?" My question was slurred as my head started to pound. What in the world did he mean by hungry? With a surprisingly strong grip, the man pulled me towards my still-running car. "How many times you seen this here tree?" 5 times." He opened the door and shoved me in. "Drive till you see it 5 more times and you'll get out. The faster you go, the quicker you'll break out of the—" "The loop? Just go now," the man said urgently, leaving no time to ask any question. I put on my seatbelt in hurry and I started driving. After each passing minute, the fear inside my chest getting stronger. The tree came into view again. 6. I floored the acceleration. It definitely took less than 10 minutes for the tree to appear this time. The old man waved at me as I sped by. 7. The road refused to stay steady in my vision, but I somehow managed to keep on the road. 8. The man and his truck were gone. Why was I smelling gingerbread? 9. I was feeling like I'm on fire, and the air conditioner was also on full blast, and didn't help. Everything felt upside down. I was burning 10. Somewhere in the distance, a timer dinged. "Sir, are you okay?" My eyes flew open. A woman stood outside my window, worry etched into every line of her face. I opened my door and looked around. I was parked directly below the sign for the Highway 165 junction. "Yeah," I said, my voice shaking. "I think I'm fine now. It looked like you had passed out." I couldn't answer. The woman insisted she stay until I drank a whole bottle of water. I sat there for a while once she was gone. Highway 165 stretched out to the right and the left, and sure enough, straight ahead, was a driveway framed by a metal gate and thickly overgrown with vines. A sign painted blue read, "Private property, do not enter." I felt it then, felt a pull, something tugging me to the nearly hidden driveway. Whatever it was, I knew now that it was hungry. I turned my car around faster than a deer to a corn feeder. Fredericksburg could wait until I evaluated my sanity. It was only then, speeding back towards my hotel, that I noticed the crate of giant peaches on my passenger seat. A note was taped to the topmost peach. "Sorry about that," it read. "My wife really don't like when strangers use the driveway."